Philip Ingram's still with me. Delighted to be joined now by Justin Urquhart-Stewart. He's an economist. He's also chairman of the Regionally Investment Platform. A very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Cracking good programme.
Oh, well, thankfully we do try. It's even better now you're on with your red braces. You know we need your red braces. Let's start with the latest GDP figures, because they're being billed as like, well, it's slowing down in the economy, but they're better than expected, so well done, everybody.
Yeah, well, you have to be quite careful, because when people start talking about the green shoots of recovery, how often does it turn out to be, in fact, be sort of advanced mould in the fridge? So, actually looking for some solid figures. So bear in mind, 1 month doesn't really tell us a great deal. And they will review the previous months. They're always adjusting the entire time. Yeah. The basic thing you take away from here, it's very, very low growth around the world. No, it's not just us. But that's no excuse to sit there and say, well, there's nothing we can do about this. There's an awful lot we can try and do about
exactly. I don't think we should ever be clapping our hands on the back, patting our hands on the back, saying, oh, 0.3% growth. This is an embarrassment.
It is, because when you think about actually the successful areas of growth in this country, and I know we mentioned before, the technology hubs around the country, we're really good at this, and yet most people will actually find it difficult to understand what they're talking about half the time. But what we've got is you have these hubs, Silicon Fen, Glen, Silicon Gorge, Silicon not implant, I've got in trouble doing that, so all these areas of little tiny high-tech businesses, and they breed. And so long as they've got really good infrastructure, and I don't mean a train, a really good infrastructure, ultra high-speed internet, which was actually one of the last things actually we got out of the EU before we left. In Cornwall, got ultra-speed internet, and it's meant now you've got businesses in really pretty, some terribly poor areas where businesses are now being set up because they can.
Because they can actually do it. But also, isn't one of the big issues we've got, again, it's energy, and it comes back to that net zero policy. If you've got, some of the highest energy costs domestically and crucially in the business world, as in the entire world, AI is the future, we're told. AI revolves a hell of a lot of energy. If it's not affordable, it's not secure, it's not reliable, well, those businesses are not going to thrive in this country.
Well, I thought AI was a form of Yorkshire accent. It took me a while to work out what they're talking about. But when you see the opportunities here and what they can do, we're so bad at our basic infrastructure. I don't mean boats, planes and things, but how can you expect anyone to run a profitable steel industry with compared to the rest of Europe when we start off at minus 20%? The extra 20% we have to pay basic fuel. You'd be mad to set up here, first of all. So, and that's not just this government. It's someone's thinking about the actual infrastructure of the nation. Power needs to be cheaper, run in a much more cost-effective manner, and planning it for 20, 30 years ahead. We haven't done any of that. At the moment, we're still faffing around trying to work out where we get power. And one of the best ideas they ever had, actually, was in the 50s, and they bring it up again a few months ago, was actually taking a pipe from Iceland, don't know how it works, to actually pump heat through to Scotland. And apparently that was all fine and dandy, and you would actually get pretty cheap fuel once you paid the cost of it. But unfortunately it didn't go through, because someone in the Foreign Office says, well, it goes through Rockall. Or Sweet Rockall, and therefore everyone claims this rock in the middle of the Atlantic, and therefore if we put a pipe across it, that might compromise it.
Right. So there's always a problem. Well, we've got the same thing. We've got pipes. We've got stuff coming from Norway. But again, if they run out of energy, they're going to stop that, and then we're going to be in trouble. We need to be secure, and especially as we've been discussing today, in a very insecure age. I'm just wondering your thoughts on the A levels, by the way, because we're interesting to talk to a lot of people saying they've done very well. You've got the usual tweet from Jeremy Clarkson this today. I got C and 2 U's at my A levels, and I'm busy sorting the lighting out for the helipad in my garden. And it's always, I'm driving a Rolls Royce or whatever it is. I'm building a new swimming pool, whatever it is. There are lots of people who do very well without those grades. Do we have a problem in terms of our education, though, in terms of we've got a lot of people who get degrees or got good A levels, but actually they're not necessarily the subjects that people want. I know so many people who've got kids doing psychology. I'm not sure how many psychologists we need. I'm thinking I'd like a few more engineers and doctors, but as someone in business, what sort of skills do we lack, and what do we need?
But I have to say, I'm wildly impressed by someone coming along, and forgive me to be rude about the industry, with media studies.
Completely.
What's that qualified you for? No, in many ways, it's not so much the degree itself. Obviously, you want to be a doctor. Understanding medicine is quite helpful. Actually, you want to be a lawyer. Lawyers can do anything. But the point really is, I'm after a piece of paper that says this person has the ability to take information over 3 years and be tested, not learn it by rote, but demonstrate their intelligence and how they can actually develop ideas and thoughts and businesses. So what we lost, and you've talked about this before, when we had the old polytechnics, which people turn their nose up. But of course, now we have, polytechnics have now become universities, but of a different type. And you need that basic trade structure. Who is actually going to mend the plumbing, the piping, the tiles?
Build the houses.
Well, let's go back to some recent news when the Romans left, as they did, I'm told. Within 50 years, a lot of those Roman towns had collapsed because no one knew how the pipes worked, no one knew how the tiles work. And by the way, someone kind of cleaned them as
I feel like we're covering a lot of ground here. Is everyone keeping up?
Nothing changes. It's exactly the same. It's just slightly different language.
Okay. No, that's absolutely, absolutely fascinating. Let me ask you about some of the people who are particularly the wealth creators. Well, certainly they've created wealth at some point, and that's those who perhaps will be worried more about inheritance tax. Now, we are told, well, certainly Treasury isn't pouring cold water on this idea that the next budget, among the many taxes that will have to go up to fill this £50 billion black hole we're told about, it could get bigger, who knows, are proposals to basically tackle inheritance tax, in particular this sort of up to 7-year tapered tax for gifts to your children where they don't get covered by inheritance tax, and it could be a gift that's involving money or jewellery or a car or whatever it is that parents are giving to their children. Often we see parents, as they reach older age, if they've got any spare lump sums, giving them to their children if they've got them in advance. So if they die within the next 7 years, there'll be some tax to pay. After 7 years, no tax. Government looking at getting rid of that. We're told, though, that inheritance tax plans would make the UK a dangerous place for the wealthy. That's what the tax experts have said. What do you make of that?
Well, it would be on the basis if you are someone who's creating wealth. By mean creating wealth, actually setting up businesses, employing people, them earning money and paying tax, and of course buying stuff in the economy. That's proper growth. That's what you need to be trying to deal with. But unfortunately, what you've got in a position now where we're focused on the wrong areas. So bring it back to the focus of areas where we can have some more growth. And I've just forgotten the second half of your question.
No, so have I. But that's it. But like in terms of the risk to say if people say, well, look, I've made money, I'm doing well, I want to be able to hand it on to my kids without them paying 40% tax on it, they're just going to leave the country, aren't they?
And well, they are. And I find frustrating with this as well. Inheritance tax is tiny. It's a really, really small amount. And
is it 1% of the tax take? I mean, it's just not.
Irrelevant. Much better to actually then focus on actually retaining and developing that wealth. You need wealthy people here. It's like this argument over a wealth tax. You can't have a wealth tax if you've created some wealth. Actually encourage people to get the wealth, then you can have a fair taxation. Well, maybe not, but at least some taxation based on something you've created. And so that's what's going to be so vital with this. So inheritance tax, quite rightly, people will sit there and say, hang on, I've already paid tax on this money because I earned it. Now you ask me to pay it. Now I'm gone. My family's going to do it. One of the key elements, and you go back to when you look at financial planning for families going across the generations, to answer the question, how does your son or daughter buy their next house? And the answer is, well, they don't. Actually, the family does. This is traditionally in Scotland what we used to have, a sort of unofficial family office.
That might be what happens in middle-class families, but, most people I know didn't get help from their families, but there wasn't any spare money to help anybody buy a home. And that's one of those sort of middle class sort of luxuries. But the bank of mum and dad increasingly is paying, but it also prices other people out of the market, doesn't it?
Yeah, and what you've got to be able to do is encourage these people, whether you like their flashy Rolls Royces or whatever. They're the people who actually pay most of the proportion of tax.
But we're one of the few countries in the world, I can't think of anywhere else I've ever been, where people are so contemptuous of people who make money.
Actually, I mean, it really is frustrating. You've said it before. Go to America, people will say, well done you for doing this. You've taken the risk. You had to mortgage your house, probably, mortgage the family. Well, not mortgage the family, but that's an idea. And be able to then be able to take that risk and grow that business. And people in America would say,
to have that talent.
Over here, you're seen as a greedy sod.
Yeah, my view is, again, as always, we can all, you can all mock people who are millionaires or billionaires, but if it was that easy, we'd all have done it. I must ask you one other question, because obviously one of the companies that looks after the money of the very rich, the PwC, the city accountancy giant, they've started a crack down on staff who work from home too often with what they call a traffic light system to track their movements. Basically, they've asked staff who are pretty much all working from home entirely that they need to be in 3 days a week, so that's 60% of the time, either with clients or in the office, and they're monitoring employees. And basically, if you go down to only 40%, below, between that, you'd have an amber light flashing on your computer screen. Below that, it'll be a red light, and you'll basically be reported to your bosses. You could have your bonuses cut, you could be sanctioned at appraisals. But apparently, a lot of the staff aren't happy about being monitored while they're being paid to do their job. It is always absolutely astounding to me that people, and by the way, these people you're working at PwC, you're on a good salary. You're being asked to do your job. You signed that contract, almost all of you, when people weren't working from home, and you are demanding the right to work wherever you want at any time. I find this astounding that people think that they get to dictate to their bosses where they work.
Good management actually would be running all of this and telling you, we need you in the office to do these things. I need people to have their natters run by the water cooler.
Yes.
Because I want to make sure people got the right attitude, they've got the right style, and living up to the culture which you've tried to get going in the business. Because otherwise, if they're at home, what are they going to be? How do you actually build a team like that? Now, it's very difficult. You know, you could do it by Zoom for an extent, but you need to be able to look people in the eye, not a fuzzy eye because the line's gone down.
And young people in the office need to learn as well. I'm always with Digby Jones, and he said to me way back after lockdown, yeah, okay, if you want to work from home, you can do it 1 day a week on a Wednesday, not on a Monday or a Friday. That was always the giveaway. Justin Urquhart-Stewart, it's been an absolute hoot. I mean, we've covered pretty much every topic under the sun. He's an economist and chairman of the Regional Investment Platform and a wearer of red braces, of course. If you're not watching on YouTube, you're totally missing out, guys. Philip Ingram.
You've sorted the world out.
Well,
there's nothing else needs to be done.
I'm going to take a breather.
I'm out of breath. I'm out of breath keeping up with you.
He's the only person I know who talks faster than me.
But there's, it's interesting, a number of things. In the UK is in a strange position. Everyone seems to think that working class is the aspirational level to achieve. We look at Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, who is a multimillionaire, but he keeps trying to describe his working class roots. We look at Angela Rayner, who is pushing towards multimillionaire.
When you say multimillionaire, you're talking about people who've owned a property. Those people don't feel like millionaires.
But they don't. But whenever it comes to their positioning, they're trying to dumb themselves down. Whereas if you look across the rest of Europe, and when I lived in Germany, the Germans couldn't understand this. Everyone was aspiring to be, or saw themselves as middle class first and foremost, and wanted to push themselves further.
I think we are bizarrely held back by this notion of working class being below middle class. These are just they're it's such a snobby, archaic attitude. It is ridiculous. But it does. But going on that issue in terms of it comes into the A levels and the jobs and everything. But coming back to working from home, though, back to that, what do you make of bosses who basically say, well, we'd like you back in the office, and we'd really like we've told you to come in 3 days a week, and then the staff are complaining about it.
I'm sorry, if you expect someone to give you money out of their pocket, whether it be their company's pocket, to do a job, then they can dictate how that job is done.
And if you don't like it,
go and get a job somewhere else.
Are we just incredibly old-fashioned for thinking that?
No, and Justin was completely right in saying you get so much more done by the natters around the water cooler and over coffee and all the rest of it. And it's all that stuff that is immeasurable. It's not just on-screen time.
Absolutely.
Everything else has to be taken into account.
Thank you very much for that.